Hello everyone, welcome back to another Ableton tutorial. Lovely to have you here. Big shout out Patreon gang, big shout out YouTube gang. Right, let's get stuck into it. What are we looking at today? Well, the title of this video, Post Resonant Objects. I couldn't think of a catchy title. If you can think of one, let me know in the comments. Basically, what we're looking at today is how to turn this we're going to look at how to turn that into this. And this is a technique I used on a track from my album called Post Resonant Object. Hence the title of this video. You can listen to the track, watch the full video, link in the description below. So let's dive into it. I'm gonna turn off this where we're heading, and we're gonna build it from scratch. So what's going on here? Well, I've got Ableton 12.2's new expressive chords device in here, and I've just made a chord progression. You don't need to use this. You can use any chord progression to do what we're looking at today. So even existing tracks you've got, whatever. So I just basically put in some chords. This device is crazy, by the way, if you haven't explored it yet, if you're not on 12.2. It's kind of like a chord sampler, I guess. Something like that is how they think about it. Anyway, I just put in some random notes and it gave me this chord progression, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to record this MIDI, new MIDI track, Command-Shift-T. I'm going to enable that track. I'm at 150 BPM today. It's a Friday afternoon, if you're wanting to follow along exactly. I'm going to select MIDI input from E4, piano basic. So now it's receiving not these notes. Instead, it's receiving the output of those MIDI chords. So I'm just going to record in one pass of that. It begins here. There we go. Okay, I'm going to press stop on those chords. I missed the end that time. So I'm just going to come in and clean that up. There we go. And I'm going to make the end of the clip here and, of course, make it a loop there. So now I've got that chord progression. I'm going to turn off that MIDI chords channel. I'm going to bring in a wavetable. Just going to make a pad sound to begin with. So instruments, exactly. Wavetable. Just sort of really gentle pad sound. Whoa, calm down. Right, so we're going to go for a triangle, something like this. Yeah. Let's give it just a little bit of wobble on this frequency. Cut off, so I'm going to go to LFO1 to do that. No, I'm going to go to the matrix, click on the filter frequency, enable LFO1. Yep, that's about how much I want to do it, and how fast I want to do it I'm going to control with LFO2. So again, I'm going to go to the matrix, click on rate here. Now I go back to the matrix. I can use LFO2 to control LFO1 rate. Exactly. There we go. And LFO2 I'm going to make random. So now we're just getting a little bit of wobble on this. Nice. Going to add a little bit of unison. I can use the noise. Yeah, there we go. I'm actually going to use the second filter here. Take a bit off the bottom end. There we go. This is quite nice. Okay, so now we have our chords. So what we're going to do is now generate a second layer that's going to follow these chords. It's going to play notes connected with these chords. Then we're going to do some funky, crunky stuff with that. So I'm just going to press Command-G. Turn that into an instrument rack. I'm going to label that chords. Sorry, chords. I think it's pronounced chords. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments. Okay, I'm going to turn that off for now, and I'm just going to bring in actually a new wavetable into that, where it says drop an instrument or sample here. So now that's again just playing those chords. I'm going to begin by bringing in an arpeggiator. And I'm going to set it to random mode. So it's now going to be triggering a random note from any of those chords at a rate of 1/8. That's fine. I want the gate to be 100% because basically what I want to do with this is create a constant stream of notes. I'm not going to be using any of the internal envelopes on Wavetable. I just want to use this basically to generate a sound. So I'm going to bring the release down to 0, and I'm going to bring the sustain up, and I'm going to bring the attack right down. This is nice. So it's just creating this constant stream of notes. Now we're going to do some other funky stuff later to control the sound, but let's just make this wavetable do something a bit more interesting. Let's put this in the middle here. Let's use some LFOs to modulate some of this. So I want wavetable position, matrix. Yeah, I want that to go 100. Now I want this to not re-trigger. And I want this amount to be 50. Yeah, nice. So that's now slowly filtering between the wave shape. Really nice. Filtering. Slowly fading between all of the wave shapes. Let's do the same thing with the frequency of the filter cutoff. I'm going to use LFO to do that. So let's click on the frequency. We go to the matrix. We turn up LFO 2 here. And do a similar thing. Going to turn off the re-trigger and just make the rate and the amount. Let's just dialing in the range here. Let's bring the amount down a bit. Actually, I think we just want a little bit like this. Yeah, super nice. Okay, now I'm just going to add a raw after this to do a little bit of sound design stuff, instruments. Raw. I just kind of basically want this to feel like it's really on the edge. It's blasting through. Blasting through all the filters that it's going through. So we're going to turn this to single mode, use something like the diode shaper, tube preamp. Nice. At this point, I'm going to go back and do actually something in the chords here. I'm going to add some MPE glissando because I think that would be really nice. So I'm going to select all of the notes here. Going to go to transform. This is not a necessary step if you're not on 12.2, but I think this is going to be a nice. Where's it gone? Glissando. Of course, it's in alphabetical order. There we go. Now we're getting this sort of nice glide between the notes, and I think that's going to be reflected when we come over here. Yeah, this is nice. Okay. So now we've got this sort of constant stream of notes of sound. They're following the chords, but they're random. Let's do some stuff to control the volume of this, because from the intro, you probably heard, it's not happening all the time. It's just letting little 1 or 2 notes through every now and then. So we're not going to do that with chant stuff. We're actually going to do it afterwards using a very modular synthy kind of technique. So I'm going to bring in first a utility. And after that utility, I'm going to bring in an LFO. I'm going to set the LFO to one direction, and I'm going to make it plus 50%, and I'm going to turn the gain all the way down before I do that, and I'm going to map that to the gain. So now this LFO is controlling how much of this sound of all of these notes are getting through. So what I'm going to do is change this to, let's change it to 8th notes, I think would be nice for now. And I'm going to switch this to binary. Now, binary is a little bit like random, but I'm just gonna turn that down so I can talk. Binary is a little bit like random mode on this, except instead of giving us a completely random value between 0 and 1, binary gives us either 1 or 0, but in a completely random manner, so there's no pattern to it. That way, it's a little bit different to the square wave, of course, which is just kind of turning on and off. Let's turn this back up. So square wave will just turn it off and on at this rate. Binary will give me a random value between 0 and 1, and that new random value will be generated every 8th note. So we get this lovely sort of turning on and off effect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do that 4 times. So now very rarely are things getting let through. In fact, not at all. So what I'm going to do is come into these last two of these, and I'm going to change the rate to 1/2 here, and I'm going to do that same thing over here. Let's change this rate to 1/2. Yeah, so now we get a situation where all four of these binary values have to be on in order for a note to actually get through. So very rarely we're getting these notes coming through. And because we've got all of this stuff sort of slowly oscillating here, the sound, the filter cutoff, and we've got this crazy input happening in the raw, we're getting this lovely juxtaposition between predictable, because we know what the chords are, and the notes that are getting through these are always going to be connected with the chords, and then completely unpredictable because of the quality of the sound is changing, or when those notes are coming through is changing. Actually, let's turn one of these back on for now, because we're just getting none coming through. There we go. There we go. And what I'm actually going to do also is come into each of these LFOs, and I'm going to just smooth it out, like maybe 3% or something. Because we've got these turning off and on at 8 notes, this gives us a possibility for a lot of clicks. Maybe you want clicks and you don't want to do the smoothing out. For this, I think I'm just going to add the smoothing and some smoothing. Okay. This is nice. Now, what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to turn these back on. I'm going to group all of this. Select it, Command G. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to pan one right and one left. Nice. So now we're actually getting twice as many notes coming through, of course, because we've got twice the chain happening. We're splitting the audio, and it's going through 1/2. So yeah, twice as many notes. Okay, so let's do some sound processing to this. Now I'm going to bring in another raw in here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this for some kind of feedbacky effect. So again, I'm going to set this to single mode. I'm going to bring in another 2 LFOs here. 1 and 2, duplicate. I'm going to set this to random, and I'm going to also set this to random. I'm going to set the rate to be 1/2, because this, I think, will sound nice, a bit slower. And I'm going to use these two to randomly control the feedback time here and the amount. I'm going to just give it a bit of drive on the way in. Maybe actually let's use the diode clipper again. 2-stage distortion. Nice. Yeah. And this is now, because I'm adding in this distortion, it's sort of erasing the difference between the sine wave and the square wave as it moves through the wave shape a bit, because of course we're adding all these extra upper partial harmonics. Right. Let's map you to here, and let's map you to here. And let's make this only go in one direction. There we go. Okay. I'm actually going to make these notes happen a bit more often right now, so I can tune this effect a bit more. So I'm just going to turn off the last 2 on each of those. Yeah, I'm going to bring in right away. Actually, I'm going to bring in an OTT at the end of all of this, because we're going to need that. Yeah, nice. Okay, the amount of feedback is just too much. So I'm just going to turn the amount down here a little bit. Actually, what I want to do is turn this down and turn this back up. Yeah. Still too much. Let's bring it back down a bit. This is nice. I'm going to give this a bit of compression here as well. I'm really driving the compression on this. It's kind of the way the sound works. I'm going to turn up the output on this OTT. Nice. Okay, let's do another stage of processing stuff in here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a reverb. Let's use hybrid reverb. And I'm going to group that. Command G. I'm going to create a dry chain because I'm going to create a couple of separate effects chains here. And you guessed it, there's going to be random amounts of whatever's coming out getting sent into all of these effects chains. So let's focus on the reverb for now. Let's make it 100% wet. Actually, let's make this a super big one, bigger spaces. Take off some of the low end. So, right. So now obviously that's sending all of these sounds to the reverb. That's a bit too much. So let's bring in a utility. And this time another LFO. And this I'm going to set to random. I'm going to change this. Let's clock this again. Let's make this perhaps every quarter note. I'm going to bring the gain all the way down. And now we're going to do this. All right, that's a bit more controlled. Nice. Okay, I'm going to turn these other random bits through back on because now we've got some context with the reverb. Let's call that a reverb, and I'm going to do the same thing actually with a spectral time. I think that would be quite nice. So bring in a spectral time in here. Let's solo that. Turn off the delay. Going to turn on this. Going to turn on freeze. Yep. I'm going to set this to crossfade mode, but let's make it quite long every time. Let's turn up the sensitivity. This is a bit too long. Let's set the mode to ultra. And you guessed it, I'm going to add another utility in here and an LFO. Same thing as on the reverb channel. We're going to turn this down to 0. We're going to turn this to random. We're going to set this to be quarter notes. Quarter notes, please, and one direction and map to this. Did I make this one direction? No, that should be unidirectional as well. Right, okay, nice. This is still a bit too spectral timey, which is a funny thing to say, given that I brought in spectral time. But I want this to sort of just disappear a bit more. So I'm going to, again, let's put a reverb at the end of that. It's adding some really interesting, some super interesting layers. Let's turn that down. Right, how does all of this sound together? This is pretty cool. Let's bring the chords back in. There we go. How to turn this chord progression, which was literally just default settings on expressive chords and bashing a few random notes. We turned that into this. Super lovely to have you here. Remember, you can put any chord progression you like into this. It's a really, I find, interesting way to add texture and layers. There's all sorts of interesting things happening. I'm saying interesting a lot. I find this stuff interesting. If you're still here, I'm guessing you find this kind of stuff interesting too. Thanks for being here. Patreon members can, of course, download this entire set, make whatever you like with it. Till next time.